segment 3, and it is Lights Out, Lights Over London, folks. It's UFO-LIGHTS Out as our third album, and we have our third guest here of the evening, CTS superfan Steve. Third cog, yes. Third cog of the evening. Steve, how are you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the CTS superfan stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just waiting to get into this, this album.
I'm sure you were just thrilled to have to listen to this album as your first guest
Actually,
on that podcast.
You know what? I think everyone is going to be very pleased with this album.
All right.
Okay. Well, Josh, run the numbers, and then let's go right into Steve's scalding hot take.
All right. Yes, UFO's Lights Out came out in 1977. According to BestEverAlbums.com, it is the 53rd best album of 1977. It is the 558th best album of the 70s overall, and it is over 3,000 in the best albums of all time.
Oh,
so not too high.
Well, another lost gem. Yes. Another lost gem like Blue Ash. So, all right, Steve, let's start the clock. Initial thoughts, UFO, Lights Out.
So I'm not surprised that is, 3,000, Josh, you said?
At 3,028 to be precise, yeah.
Okay, 3,020. I'm not surprised by that because every song I listened to on this album reminded me of some other band, and I don't know if it was a predecessor to other bands that came, or if this was the influence to bands that would come.
Yep.
So
what are some of those bands that you listed?
Oh, well, I mean, Scorpions for one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of I had a Foreigner feel to that too. There's some Boston-esque.
I've got one I'll throw in.
Yeah, you go.
Iron Maiden, perhaps, because my God, this could have been an Iron Maiden album at times.
I mean, I felt that way too. I did not want to go into the heavy metal portion of this, but I felt that way as well. I mean, is Dokken? You guys correct me.
Dokken, I think it's.
Yep, Dokken, correct.
Is it Dokken? I apologize for all the CTS listeners gonna correct me on the Dokken, but okay, so yeah, Dokken was definitely there. I actually had a really hard time finding this album to listen to. So what about you guys? Did you guys have a hard time finding this?
I listened to it on Spotify. Yep.
Yeah, so it was a remastered version.
Yeah, I listened to it on Spotify too.
Okay, so there was a couple live tracks at the end.
Yep, I always skip those extra tracks.
Yep.
Well, it was nice, Josh, because they were at the end. There was a couple live tracks, but I found the live tracks a little bit more dirtier for me.
Oh, okay.
They were I'm a live fan. I like live music. So just running down the tracks there. The first track, you guys fill me in with the songs here, because I just
Too Hot to Handle.
Too hot to handle would be.
Well,
too cold to hold.
The setting for me on this one was I'm listening to in my garage, and my wife comes out and she's like, "What the hell are you listening to?" I was like, "Well, a little UFO." So
this seems like the perfect band to listen to in a garage.
Exactly. I thought the same thing, Josh. So track one, Scorpions, definitely. That was I felt that was it's all lead guitar, right? Mm-hmm. So I definitely felt that. Track two, everything's guitar driven on this, which I love. I love guitar, but I felt like everything on this album I can listen to. With another band, for that matter. The third track, what was that, John?
Try Me.
The third track was Try Me.
Okay, so that's when they introduced some orchestral stuff, right?
Yeah, it's a sad ballad type of song.
Yes, it was, yeah. And
Yep.
I actually kind of dig that. So, but it started out like a little bit of like the album came into like more like a foreigner based songs. I mean, I know it's British rock. There's supposed to be space rock and everything like that. There was some orchestral stuff there. At the end, there was some Pink Floyd I picked up on, so that was cool. I mean, because it's guitar driven.
Love to Love was that last track.
Love to Love. One of my I started that as one of my albums or one of my songs I like.
Which Steve Harris of Iron Maiden has called "Love to Love" his favorite song in the world, by the way, for those that are wondering. So
Okay.
that's a high compliment from one of my favorite metal guitarists all time. So, yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it also was in Detroit Rock City. Have you guys seen that movie? I always remember it from
geez,
that
no.
movie as well. Oh yeah, good stuff.
I have not, but
I know a little UFO. In fairness,
I feel like every song could be a part of a soundtrack.
that's been a theme this week, hasn't it? Somebody said that about New. Now we're saying it about this. It's a lot of film score feels this week.
I was feeling like mid to late 70s, Dazed and Confused, insert any song on this album to that soundtrack, and you could probably delete one and add another, and you'll be fine.
Yeah,
Josh, what were your thoughts?
This isn't even their highest ranked album on Best Ever Albums. It's Strangers in the Night is considered their best album. So
Strangers in the Night.
I don't know what that is. This kind of reminds me of I feel like I'm having deja vu. It's like going back to the Blue Ash conversation earlier. This seems like another band that sounds perfectly okay, but is not doing anything revelatory, and there's a million other bands that did it better.
Right.
Now, maybe that Strangers in the Night album is better. I don't even know if they have any singles. I'd have to look that up. But like Steve said, it's very like guitar driven, guitar based music. There's wailing guitars. There's guitar solos. You've got I think you have some synth at the end in Love to Love along with guitars, and then they throw in some piano and Just Another Suicide, the second track, and then they throw in the cover of Love, Alone Again, or although they call it Alone Again.
There's a throwback to the 60s, right?
Yeah.
If I could interject here, I think where I started loving this album, or at least liking this album, was where they started throwing in some keys and some keyboards, where it became more of a I don't want to say like you throw in that big Guns N' Roses fan myself. You throw in the Estranged, and that kind of vibe, like all the keys, preceding, the big guitar riffs, and I think they came in like halfway through the album. I got a lot of feel for I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but like I got Dream Theater was in my head.
Dream, is that a band? I don't even know Dream
A little
Theater.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a prog metal band.
Oh, okay.
Think like Queensryche if they turned up the guitars a little bit. Josh would be Dream Theater. And if you like 15-minute epics that sound like video game music, that is also a feel for Dream Theater. I don't mean to minimize them because there's stuff from Dream Theater I like, but yeah, these guys are tighter than Dream Theater.
Yes, I mean it was minimized Dream Theater. That's how I would kind of put it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can I throw something in here? This was basically, both in time period and sound, this was proto new wave of British heavy metal. And when we talk new wave of British heavy metal, we're talking
Like
Judas Priest,
yes.
We're talking Iron Maiden, we're talking all bands like that, Diamond Head, stuff like that, a genre that I love. So as you might imagine, I liked this album quite a bit. It did a great job, I think, of, this is 77, and 77 was also when Van Halen 1 came out, and you can see a little bit of what Van Halen was doing a little later, actually, because, you know, they had that rule about no synths, right? And no keyboards and stuff. I think keyboards was still 84, if I remember, and the synths didn't come until, like, Fair Warning. But they were kind of dabbling in that. But yeah, this is proto Diamond Head, this is proto Venom and Iron Maiden and early Def Leppard and Judas Priest. It's in that genre.
Yeah.
It's a really crunchy guitars. It has some of the same glowing, shimmering guitars that glam rock had, along with the ethos and the feel of, you know, they don't sound like Zeppelin necessarily or Sabbath, but, you know, their guitars are plugged in and they're heavy like they were. You know, they're doing guitar demonstration work, which was something that was always a part of new wave of British heavy metal, that, you know, you have those extended solos and the soaring vocals and stuff like that. All of that is here. And so from that end of things, it can sound derivative because you know bands that sort of took this style and might have done it a little bit better. But it's important to remember that these bands did it after UFO did it. So they were, I think, a very important connective piece between the 70s hard rock that we've been doing, Josh, and the 70s hard rock that a lot of listeners may know, that, and early 80s. And even like hair metal. You know, there's a lot of hair metal in this. Steve mentioned like Dokken and stuff, but you can hear a lot of those 80s hair metal bands in this, you know, if they just glam themselves up.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
AC/DC. Yeah, I actually heard a little bit of some Zeppelin there, especially with the vocals, with some they were trying to like channel his inner Robert Plant.
Well, so was everybody in hard rock for the next 30 years, right? So from that, there's a long list there. But yeah, you guys are right. There's AC/DC is a good touch point, Josh, because I think their debut was 76. And they're in, you know, 76 to 79. They're in the Bon Scott era. So as Steve said, this guy's singing more like Robert Plant, both in the volume, but also his vocal style, whereas, you know, Bon Scott was doing, you know, more like "See You Ride," you know, going in a different direction where he uglies it up a little bit. But yeah, it's that prototypical sound. It's kind of weird that UFO isn't as well known, because I know within the genre of metal, they're a well-regarded I mean, that's how I got to these guys, that they're considered one of the forerunners of a lot of metal bands that I like. And they're often referenced by bands I love, and probably anybody who considers themselves to be a metalhead but weaned in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s metal. The metal bands they like, UFO was a seminal influence for them.
John, can I ask you a question here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go for it.
So,
yeah, go for it.
Did you guys hear the acoustic guitar in any of these songs? I equated it. There was a little bit of Boston there too. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you guys feel about that. A lot of the songs, especially deeper towards the in the middle of the album, start with acoustic guitar and kind of like build it from there. So I felt that Boston feel.
Well, I'm doing a peek right now because we didn't do research ahead of this. So some things that are interesting from some of the touch points. One of the things that stands out immediately is actually the Scorpions guitarist was in this band from 73 to 78.
So you're right on the money.
Michael Schenker. So you're pretty much on the money, Steve, in terms of that, because he was in it and then he left at 78. So he would have been in the band here in 77. There was also an ex-Skid Row guitarist was in here, so there's a little bit of connective tissue to the 80s. They actually played and toured with both AC/DC and Rush. So there we go, Josh. You know, you have, so if you're trying to see, you know, and we didn't cheat, I promise on this, but of bands from, they opened for everybody. Ready for this, guys? From Blue Oyster Cult to Styx to Jethro Tull, REO Speedwagon, and Molly Hatchet. They also toured with AC/DC, Cheap Trick, Kiss, Thin Lizzy, Nazareth, and Judas Priest.
Jeez, that covers the gamut of hard rock in the 70s.
And every show I would go to in the 90s.
They were in the soup, weren't they?
Yeah, and they're still putting out albums, crazily enough.
Absolutely. So
are they?
They're still around. Yep, they are still around. They went on hiatus multiple times in the 80s, which is odd because you would have thought their music would have found a larger audience there. But they did have multiple reunions, 91 and then 2000. They were in there as well. And they even have another era from 2004 to 2017. Their 17th album, You Are Here, was released in 2004, which apparently was called the Vinnie Moore era. So...
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the hell that is.
He must be a new guy.
Yeah.
It's like Chicago.
Well, he is the guitarist, yes, who was added. He's their new permanent guitarist.
Of course, guitarists always get the main line. Okay.
They're not quite Blue Ash where they were under the radar completely. This is a band that people in the 70s, they had quite a few songs that are well known. Adventures in the Night made both the UK and US top 40 charts. So it's not like they were obscure, right? And they're influential. And you can hear it because they really, I can't stress enough that they sound like bands you've heard. So it's going to be tempting to say they're derivative, but they're not. They came before them.
See, that's interesting because I'd rather listen to the bands that came after them than this band, which is sorry to say. I didn't know UFO before this, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes they, the
Okay.
other bands do it better, right? End up building on what UFO did and putting their own spin on it. So I can understand that. Since we didn't do any research, I didn't look to see kind of where they fell in the spectrum, but it's good to know that they are kind of a precursor to all these bands that we've been talking about. That makes me respect them more, at least.
Sure. What were, as a last take, Josh, because you haven't gone into yours, would you recommend this album or not so much?
Yeah, I would recommend it. It was kind of another lukewarm take, but there's definitely talent there, and I always appreciate a good guitar solo, so they've got those in there, and it just, like Steve said, it's a good album to listen to when you're in the garage working on the car or just doing chores, and it is probably worth a re-listen on my part, since I really only listened to it one time as per the dictates of this type of episode. And so it could, maybe I'll hear more of it and appreciate it more on a re-listen.
Okay. Steve, how about you? Would you recommend?
I would definitely, like Josh said, give a second listen to this and get into the lyrics. I know you're a lyrical guy, John, and I definitely do not, get into the lyrics initially.
Mm-hmm.
The music, the sound, the tone, the driving guitar is something that kind of turned me on. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna listen to this album all the way through. I would give it a listen and let people kind of go from there.
It seems.
Yeah, I was going
to say,
ahead.
John, it seems like they have a sense of humor, tongue-in-cheek, kind of like in the way that The Darkness do, because their album before this is called No Heavy Petting, which I find hilarious.
No Heavy Petting and Force It was the album before that. So there's a slight sexual tinge to those as well, if you weren't able to pick up the not even double entendre. I think that's a single entendre right there, right? So yeah.
I think in the first on the first track, which was John, Jeff, or John and Josh.
The name of the first? Did you just not pull up any of the tracks, Steve? Is that what's going on?
No, I
Too hot to handle.
I did. Yeah. Okay. It was like Turn Me Over, Do Me Again, something like that.
No, it's sexually charged rock would be what I would say lyrically. The content of this is yes, which of course makes sense. Yeah.
Which got you going initially, and then it was like it kind of
I do love me some sexually charged rock, and I think themes of 70s hard rock were usually one of three things, right? There was sexually charged songs, followed by partying, thumbs up songs, followed by bizarre, mystical, and fantasy themes of something that one of the band members read, usually the serious member of the band, put that in there as well. So those were usually the 3 themes of most hard rock. Yeah. And 2 of them were present here, and I do believe UFO does dabble in that fantasy realm as well at different times, like any good hard rock band of the 70s.
Of course.
So, but yeah, I would recommend this. This has a really good sound. When you look at it in the context of 77, when it came out, it was a little bit ahead of its time in terms of the sound. It's well produced. Everybody can play their instruments proficiently. I like the fact that, Josh, we haven't done a lot of big soaring rock outside of,
No, that's true.
Zeppelin and the Who and stuff like that. And, we're going to get to that quite a bit. And we're not even, we did the Eagles, right? But we didn't even get to, soaring Eagles music yet. It's still sort of more like California cool Eagles. So it was cool to have an album that just plugged in the amps and had at it. It was a nice little change of pace. So I'd give this a recommend.
Nice.
I would as well. Definitely. The only thing I have to say about that is that the Eagles actually soared.
Yes, they
John?
did. they
some
did
people,
soar.
sure.
Look, everybody's bringing their best jokes this week, except for Josh and I. We're way behind in terms of the cleverness this week. So well played, Steve.
I'm just waiting to hear when the Eagles soar. That's all.
There you go. Well, a twist of phrase right there. We'll end this segment. And Steve, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. John, Josh, I appreciate it. CTS, superfan Steve. Not you.
So Josh